We'll probably get started here in just a few seconds. Let people still feel ready. Is that the Zane profile? All right, cool. Well, we're going to go ahead and get started. This is the DevOps for the Discouraged talk. So if you're here for something else, you know, fair heads up. Okay, well, my name is James Wickett. I live in Austin, Texas. Work at a company called Signal Sciences, which is a startup, and I do stuff around rugged dev. I work on a project called Gauntlet, and we have a security conference in Austin called last week. The company I work for is Signal Sciences. We're making an AppSec effective and practical. If you're interested in it, just get on the website. But we're kind of in startup mode right now. So, okay, here's great news. Like, I realize some people here are from the East Coast, and it's like, I'm just going to tune out. It's like dinner time, whatever. So here you can like download the slides right now, and then so you'll get all that content. And you'll just be ready to coast through the rest of this, and like later you can be like, what was that guy talking about? And you can refer back to it. And I wanted to give you some fair warning, like, you know, SkyMall going away is really sad. And actually, in my seat on the flight over here, there was no SkyMall, and I was a little confused by it. I don't know if they've taken it out of the airplanes. Have they done that? Is that? Yeah, I don't know. My 2-year-old's going to be really upset because I use that to tell other stories on the airplane. Anyway, so I've decided to take SkyMall photos and put them throughout the whole deck. So this is going to be the start of it. Well, this one is really from Austin. That's why you want to know. But if you find yourself in Austin, we'd love to have you come out to Austin OWASP for the last Tuesday of the month. And we also have LastCon, which is much like this conference. And it's the last Thursday and Friday of October, as long as it doesn't compete with Halloween. So you kick it or a week over there. So I'd say we have to put that on the radar. Also to save you some headache, because if you're like, not sure, maybe there's another talk I want to go to, I'm going to give you the conclusions up front. So if you want to just coast through the rest of the talk that way or whatever, it's cool too. So here's some conclusions hopefully that we'll arrive at together. It's real easy to just get discouraged in our industry, but I think there is hope. Agile DevOps and continuous delivery practices have an impact for the way we do application security and information security. I think that we're behind right now, but I think there's some really good opportunities for us to add value in the organization, especially if we're moving towards kind of more of a DevOps and I think the integrated inside of the build pipeline and the operational tooling really is a win. And I think that unit and integration tests, they're good, but they're not enough. We need to like work on putting tests that focus on attack tooling, things like that inside of our pipelines and deployments. All right, so audience survey here. And it's not what is this guy doing because I'm not quite sure. I think it's a hair growing product. For those that just walked in, we're doing a memorial to Sky Mall as well throughout the deck. So anyway, so this you can answer the next couple questions, not as yourself, but as a person you maybe knew at a previous company, because I realize you might be sitting next to coworkers or bosses or stuff like that. So answer honestly for you at a previous company, right? So do you feel unable to cause change in your organization, positive change in your organization? Have you ever felt that before? Been that way? No, your friends in that other company, have they ever felt that way? Yeah, okay. Have you ever felt that security is left out of important engineering decisions or business decisions? Okay, yep. Have you ever reported a serious internal vulnerability only to see 6 months or more later? Okay, lots of intro. Okay, so that's why we're here. Your boss probably thinks you're here for this. But we're here because we want to talk about like what are we actually doing in the organization. I think that we could say like humans optimize for the probable, and like that's like sort of like philosophical. Right? So you can say okay, we optimize for the probable, and we do so when we talk about things like doing unit testing. Like we understand like oh these are the flows we want to look at, or if we look at things like integration testing, when we start trying to go into there. And we call those things like happy path engineering or whatever, right? You could think of the optimal user flows, and then there's also the tendency to optimize for the possible. And there's a difference there. Like people call this over-engineering. It's where you do stress and load testing. Obviously, you don't do it on everything, but on the stuff that you're really sure that might happen, right? But you sort of craft this scenario in your mind. And so we sort of live in the balance between these two. And I think we actually live in the balance where we say we try to really optimize. If you're trying to do good engineering, you're trying to like look at what's actually possible, but not just possible, but like how you perceive what's really going to be probable. So you try not to like build too much, but you try to like build slightly different than what you think, but you're still kind of scoped like your perception, and that's pretty important. And it really starts begging the question like how do you even perceive what is probable? How do we know what we're doing? And I think this could be like categorized as the epistemological problem of software development. 2 points for using the word epistemological in a talk and trying to pronounce it correctly, right? Syllables. Okay, so but we attempt to solve it. We attempt to solve this by gathering rhetoric and data to try to support our conclusions. And you're probably in meetings like that where it's like, yes, we must do this because, and there's like a big whiteboard and there's all this data or theorized way that the company's done stuff to like justify the way that the current engineering approach. I think that there's maybe I think this is a problem that we've seen over and over again in the industry, and we continue to like try to solve it in different ways. And so I'm going to talk about 3 different approaches to solve the epistemological problem of software development, and we're going to walk through that, and we're going to be talking to ultimately kind of coming through the DevOps and continuous delivery areas. But first, we see Agile. And if you look at Agile sort of says, well, we don't really know what we're building, so we're just going to build all the time. Like we're just going to release it. We're going to release it this week. We're going to release it tomorrow, and we're going to continue to do that. And it sort of became that whole model of like we're just going to ship this stuff. And that was really good. And then we started rallying around behavior-driven development. And we're like, oh, here's some things that we're going to talk about. We're going to all agree of like these are behaviors we want to do, and we're going to continue to ship it. And there was a kind of a grand statement, and you can read through this quote here, but really it's like the idea is we're just trying to get to the stuff that matters. Like we're trying to answer that problem of like what did we really come here to build, right? And we don't want to do that 6 month the roll waterfall anymore. Like we want to do this really quick, and we want to do with the behaviors and the interaction with our software and like software that people feel like is meeting their needs appropriately, and that's how people are doing that. So we do things like where we try to amplify the feedback loop and continue to like give people. I don't know what's going on with either. But we try to like provide that, right? It's like so every whatever that meeting is with your customer, whether it's through your BDD specs or whatever, you're regularly trying to figure out like what it is you're building and trying to see that. And in the end, like we see that like those rapid iterations win. Like and we saw a complete change, a big shift in the industry from that. And I think it's important like to remember that like Agile is our guiding light. This has got to be the best one. So okay. But I think that if we just stop at Agile, like that's not really far enough. Like we're not really seeing the big picture, because no longer are we shipping CDs and DVDs, and there is a complete different way that we're delivering software now. We're delivering software as a service. That means a lot of different things, but over the last 10, 15 years, we've seen a big change in how we distribute software, how we, the delivery cadence, and even the revenue models, how we're building all this stuff. You know, we're not pricing per CPU anymore or anything like that, right? We're selling time, we're selling usage of our system, we're selling, we're selling actual function of the product. And this is sort of the continuation of Agile into DevOps. It's sort of that natural bridge. In fact, like a lot of people who write about this, they say, yeah, you know, DevOps is the application of Agile methodology to system administration, and that's sort of the movement that we're going to. You know, no deck is really complete without the words DevOps written on your hands. So it took a while for the ink to wash off, but it was worth it. The important part about DevOps is that we think about like where it came from, and like we sort of go back to our roots and the history of it. And if you step back to 2009 at the Velocity conference, there was a guy, Andrew Schaefer, and he proposed a birds of a feather talk at Velocity, and he said, "I'd like to talk about agile infrastructure." And he sort of perceived that like no one was going to show up to it, so he didn't even show up to his own birds of a feather. But this other guy, Patrick Dubois, did show up to it. And he's like, "Dude, where's that guy? Like, you said he was going to be here, and like he's not here." And so there was some confusion with that. Later that year, Patrick went on to found DevOps Days in Ghent, and then now DevOps Days happen around the world, and they are community organized groupings of people that are talking about DevOps, and they happen all over the world right now. So it's kind of funny, and both those guys are they're good friends now, and they joke about that moment. I think Patrick later found him at the bar. It's like, dude, you weren't even there, and so it was pretty funny. At that same conference, that was the first time that John Allspaw, who's now at Etsy, but he was at Flickr then, and he said, "Hey, we're doing 10 deploys a day," and people were just like, "What? Like, how could you possibly be doing 10 deploys a day? We do 3 a year, and even then it's really painful. Why would you do that? And you're crazy." And there was a huge outflow from that. And this was the first DevOps Days that happened in Ghent in 2009. So, like I said, the slides switched around there. But I kind of go through that because it's a DevOps is one of those things that people kind of say it's a buzzword, and it's like there's certainly people that are trying to milk it for money, but it was totally like just like random people that are trying to approach this idea of like we want Agile to apply to the way we're delivering our software, and like we're trying to make a difference in that. This is a lawn statue, so I guess if you're into that. But Gene Kim, you're probably familiar with Gene, but he says the opposite of DevOps is despair. I think that's quite telling. Theo Schlossnagel says DevOps is operationalism of the world. Once software moved from being the thing you ship and just like that one instance of it to like continual operational runtime, like it's a complete shift in how you're thinking about this stuff. And like I said earlier, it's a community movement, and it all started with that whole idea. Like developers are like, "I want change," and operations are like, "I want stability," and there's a wall of confusion and there's other stuff over the wall. And really, like it started was like this is kind of the way it was invoked, right? It's like you've probably seen this is now the DevOps girl, right? But this is the driver behind why we even need DevOps, why it matters, why we care. And we realize that these two groups don't even know what they're doing, and I think it's a sign that there's a breakthrough between uniting these two groups, putting them together, helping them build stuff together, and really trying to get back to that making software that matters that we talked about earlier in Agile. And a lot of people that talk about DevOps really will stop at like DevOps is just cultural. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. Adam Jacobs says DevOps is an inclusive movement that codifies a culture. And it was trying to break through that whole wall scenario where you're throwing over the wall and there's like 10 developers to one operations person. And And I think that, a lot of times, probably in your organizations, I think that one of the titles, the subtitles for this talk is like, maybe you've been DevOps, like you've been sold this thing and hasn't really worked out. But it's because maybe your organization started out like technology first and didn't really go down the cultural path. And I believe the culture is going to be like one of the number one reasons why DevOps succeeds in an enterprise or an organization. And what we do in our culture is what really matters. Like the software, the technological bits, the chefs and puppets and all that stuff in the world, like it's great, but like how we actually try to like work together and build stuff is the difference. So, I mean, you probably want one of those, right? Everybody has that. That's why people didn't buy enough of these. Is why SkyMall went out of business. So in my house, I have an almost 3-year-old, and I like to say we have a moon culture in our house, and it's a little less mystic than it sounds, but she's like all about the moon. Like she like knows the phases of the moon, more or less. She's like crescent moon tonight, or full moon, or where's the moon, and like we talk about it, and it really started to be this thing. I started telling her stories about the moon, going on a rocket ship to the moon, kind of stuff like that, and she found that very entertaining. But it sort of like started to shift in our house. Like now I started, I got like a little app that like tells me the phases of the moon, so I can be like, well, honey, it's 32% illuminated, waning crescent, and like that kind of business. But I started like, putting dashboards and things like that in place, so I actually knew, how to like continue that conversation. And so we sort of had a shift, and it's kind of funny like to think about, but it's really similar in our organizations. Like the stuff we value is the stuff that we start building things around, we start kind of uniting around. I think that's a really important piece. There's a kind of a thought that like DevOps is like the next step no matter what. But I think that DevOps is and this is from the book on cloud computing. It's like DevOps is the inevitable result of needing to do efficient operations in a distributed computing and cloud environment. And I think you could say that DevOps is like an invention of like necessity, but I think that. But I would say it is an invention of necessity. It's like that was something that we were trying to approach this problem, and the ways we were doing it in the old days, it just wasn't going to scale, right? All right, here's another quote from. I just put a lot of quotes of like what is DevOps, because maybe we all have different ideas of what DevOps are. But these are some of the guys who are industry leaders in the DevOps space and what they think about it. So also, DevOps is not a tech problem, but it's a business problem. There's this great report released last year. I think, I don't know the actual numbers, but the links are here in the bottom. But I think it was like 3,000 respondents or something like that. But they really touted this as the first scientific study of the relationship between organizational performance, IT performance, and DevOps practices. And, if you don't want to read the whole thing, like, this is the punchline. And it's much like you would expect, right? You're like, okay, yeah, people that are actually happy, people that are doing a job that they like and they're trying to deliver software, like that's going to improve the IT performance and the organizational performance. All right, let's see, what else? What else do people say about DevOps? Anybody seen this before? Culture, automation, measurement, sharing? No? Okay, all right, well, good. These two guys that run the DevOps Cafe podcast. This is Damon Edwards and John Willis, but they sort of were trying to codify like what does DevOps really mean, and so they came up with CAMs. Some people have argued that it needs an L, so it could be clams. They want lean to go in there. We'll talk a little bit more about lean here in a minute. But I believe that when you start breaking it down this flow, it's like, hey, culture is important. And we're going to go through all these different aspects to talk about what they mean and how they can be inside of an organization. So. Okay, culture influences. We do things to decrease, and I'm not talking like having beer or whatever, like everybody grab their little armadillo and drink a Lone Star. No, this is decreasing time. All right, sweet. Some people were paying attention to this guy and all stuff. Good. All right. So decrease the time from development to release. We need to have blameless postmortems, reward failure, and have high emphasis on testing, and try to unite different groups, do different organizational ways to combine groups on this stuff. One of the worst things you can do is just like take your ops team and be like, sweet, you are now a DevOps team, and it's like, okay, really, what does that mean? You know, anybody have a friend who might have worked in an organization that might have maybe done that before? Yeah, okay, right. Yeah, and that's really common. And then usually people hate DevOps because of that, and so like right on, like you should hate that. All right, so if you get to, this is like, I mean, does anybody own one of these pillows? No? It does, right? You're like, I'm in the plane, this would be great. Yeah, it's like you didn't worry what other people would think about you, it would just be totally cool. So, anyway, so seek automation to increase repeatability. That's what we're talking about here with automation. And this slide could be like 5 slides long. I'm sure like you guys probably we could probably like sit here for 30 minutes and like not repeat and continue to name like automation and DevOps tools, right? And then just have a huge list here. But the idea is that we're moving away from manual configuration. We're not doing that anymore. We're not proposing like, you know, we have this magical software solution that's going to be it, but like we're going to unite our tooling around kind of our culture and go that direction. We're going to do measurement, and we're going to measure the stuff that we care about, and we're going to measure the things that are important to like our culture and to like actually building the stuff that operational runtime. This is a little dashboard trimmed down here, and this is just at the startup I work at. Like this is how many deploys in the last day. We did 6 deploys to stage and 5 deploys to prod, and I guess some of us are here at the conference, so that's why it's a little low. But like you kind of see like. Here's the number of, here's how the software rolls out, here's the intervals when it's rolling out, here's how long they're generally taking. We can start building dashboards and kind of getting metrics around this kind of thing. And it helps us see like what's going on. We can start correlating like code commits to builds to deploys, and we start having like a bigger picture of what's going on our stack. Okay, so stuff like for sharing, I think there's a lot of things you could say about sharing. Some people talk about sharing, about like coming to conferences and talking about it. Some people talk about, you know, building dashboards that everybody can get to, building, you know, letting people compose the data in their views for their own way. Like, I think that's really important. We use bots a lot in our chat system. So like whenever you know, we have Jenkins bots and deploy bots and like all sorts of different stuff, and we're able to see that. But everybody from, you know, you don't have to be like writing the actual code to see like what's going on in the system, because it's like, you know, the little bot is narking somebody out or showing, you know, saying what's going on in the system at any one time. There's a lot more on DevOps. We're going to move into continuous delivery, but if you haven't read this book, The Phoenix Project, I would totally recommend it. I don't like wholeheartedly recommend any books, but it's a really good book. It's a rewrite of The Goal. If anybody's familiar with The Goal from like the 80s, which took a lot of like lean and kind of manufacturing wisdom and codified it for people that were kind of in that space. But it's like that, but it's with IT, and it's super well done. It's a good entertaining read, so hope you enjoy that. All right, let's get into continuous delivery. You guys all have one of these suitcases, right? Skateboard suitcase? Totally? Yeah. That sounds awesome. You know, the more you look at the SkyMall stuff, you're like, I could totally use that. That would be really cool. All right, so it's not really how much, it's not really how often you deliver, but really how little you can deliver at any one point. Which may sound kind of different, but like we're trying to get to a small batch size. And we're trying to build our pipeline so everything's a sequential, you know, from build to test to deploy, right? We're kind of going down that pipeline. So like I said, we're doing like a batch size of 1, which is one of those things that like the Lean and the Kanban and all those folks really believe in. And the old way of thinking about this, and I've worked in organizations where it's like this, it's like when we change the Oracle database, everything will, you know, die, right? And so we don't do it but once every 6 months or a year, and it's just like flurry of activity trying to prepare for that one moment, and it always goes wrong. And so now instead we're saying, okay, changes are bad, yeah, they actually break stuff, but if you put them into small little changes over time, like you'll be able to catch the one change that was bad, you'll fix that. It's a completely different way of doing things. It also helps because we say, all right, you got to deploy your own stuff, and so we have a deploy button It's not a cool hardware button, but I think you should build one. But it is. There's you just go to the website, you say deploy, and every developer is in charge of putting their deploy out. And we have enough patterns. Like so, some of the patterns you do in continuous delivery, you make sure you don't pass your defects on to the next step. Your goal is not. It's not necessarily to make it faster, but it's making it easier for people to do it, right? And some of that will end up being like speed. Like, so how do you increase the flow? I mentioned how we use the bots to troll the users. So it basically just it's like, hey, our tier is off, like its main version, so we need to go ahead and deploy that. And then we allocate time to enhance the build, test, and deploy systems, so we actually dedicate our engineering resources to help fix that up. Let's see. This is one that people talk about is you write software and you leave it sitting in the code repo for a month or whatever before you deploy it. Like you've actually put a lot of latency in that code, some technical debt, and now it's to go back whenever it gets deployed. And if you're living in the continuous delivery world, you're totally, I get that. But if you're not, this is just kind of making the shift away from this technical debt is it's pretty huge. So that's the history of where we've come, where the industry is, and it's complete hand wavy, my opinion only. So, but if you kind of buy that and you're willing to go with that, I think we can say the next arc that needs to get brought into the DevOps movement is security. And you look at and actually say maybe we should even just call it rugged because security's become toxic a lot of times. But either way, it's the same idea because you end up with this. You have a friend who maybe once said this. No hands? Okay, got some hands back there. Yeah. Okay, everybody knows that, right? And okay, hey, has anybody ever heard that? And then as a security person, how does it make you feel? Like my first week on a job with some guys, they told me this, and I was like, wait, then we don't get paid. That would be bad. We need to make money off this, right? But it's sort of it's you don't think I'm a complete idiot, right? But as a security person, you feel that. You feel well, they think that I'm just a huge hater, and I hate them, and they hate me, and now it's this problem. And I think there's cultural unrest, but some of it's natural. We're driven with different things. Security's sort of traditionally been kind of going down this track of audit and PCI and SOX and yada yada. And I want to read this because I think this is really, to me, this states the real problem. Risk assessment introduces a dangerous fallacy that structured inadequacy is almost as good as adequacy, and that underfunded security efforts plus risk management are about as good as properly funded security work. Does that resonate with you? Does that bother you? That's what bothers 2 people. Good. 3. Okay, 3. Okay, can I have 5? No. It bothers you, right? Right? And I think that it is a problem. We don't want to do that. We don't want to just say, oh, well, we'll accept the risk and whatever. We actually want to get back to doing security engineering. And we find ourselves in a similar problem. Most shops will have 100 developers to 10 operations to the 1 security person. And as the flow goes that way, the hatred builds. And so, oh yeah, I mean, it's true, right? And we've all felt that. And rightly so. 100 to 1 ratio is not exactly a fair ratio, right? And it's we can't review all the code that 100 people wrote. I'm 1 person. That's impossible. And so then security starts saying things like, oh no, we can't do that. You become a blocker. And then the business units that are doing continuous delivery, they're well, we're pushing stuff out 10 times a day, and you guys review it once a year. I don't know, whatever. It's your problem. And then there's more hatred and all that stuff. So. Okay, security tools, a lot of times they run out of band, they're confusing, kind of like that, right? And then usually when they're done, you end up getting this lovely PDF, right? And it's 473 pages, and you're what am I going to, I've never read anything that's 473 pages. I really was working on saying epistemological properly, right? So, but I think the tide is changing. I think we are actually in a moment that is going to be really important going forward. And I don't know. I don't know what that means. But there is the idea of resilience. I don't know. I was just like, where can I put this one? It's too funny not to put. So, but the idea that we're like trying to like look towards resiliency, and people like hold up Netflix, is like, okay, they do mean stuff inside of their system, like that's really good. And people start like kind of like drawing near to that, and like you hear so many talks about that because it strikes closer to the engineering work that we want to do instead of that whole idea of like, okay, we'll just accept it, like we may fail or whatever. And we get to the idea of rugged. And I'm from Texas. I'm actually not originally from Texas, but I've lived there for like 11 years now. And in our grocery store, we sell Ziploc bags. They're HEB, so if you're from Texas, people love HEB, which is really kind of a weird thing. But they're Texas tough, right? So I don't know, like I'm like, what does that even mean? But it's like this romanticized idea of like what it means to be Texas and your plastic bags that will hold stuff. And they sell, like people want it, right? You're like, I mean, you can just write Texas stuff on anything, and it's like people will say, yeah, that sounds good. I'll take 5 of those. And I found the rugged software movement. Jeff Williams, who's here at the conference, was part of that. Josh Corman, David Rice. I'm just going to read just two little short excerpts from the Rugged Manifesto. Although the whole thing's like 100 words long as it is. But it starts resonating with that idea of like, how do we approach security, and can we do it differently, and can we do it in a way that's more akin to the Netflix model of like doing mean stuff and like and building engineering to that instead of the kind of the security blocker type model. And so here's two excerpts. So I am rugged, and more importantly, my code is rugged. I recognize that software has become the foundation of our modern world. I recognize the awesome responsibility that comes with this foundational role. And I'm rugged because my code can face. And I am rugged because my code can face these challenges and persist in spite of it. So that sort of like captures what we see of like the Netflix thing or whatever. Here's some links for you to look at, or if you're interested in the idea like rugged or where rugged intersects with DevOps, because I see a lot of overlap in the communities. But it's where you have stuff that's repeatable, it's reliable, reviewable, rapid, resilient, reduced attack surface. We do this rugged podcast. Haven't done one for Christmas and Thanksgiving were off. We need to really get back on that for this year. But we started breaking down to like all the itties, right? It's like defensibility, availability, recoverability. We started trying to bucket all these into like meaningful categories, and like how do we start looking at that? We've interviewed different people, both from software industry and from other industries. Like, what does that mean in your industry? I got a good friend who's a plumber who I keep trying to like get on the show. But like, you really have to think about some of these things whenever you're like dealing with the water. Like if it gets spoiled or whatever, like people die, right? And so, we don't have that same gravity when you deal with software, right? We don't always treat it that way. And I started thinking through this, and the more we've talked about it, and we've brought different people on the show, and we keep kind of coming around the same idea of like, if it's not about quality and transparency. And really creating value inside of the organization and kind of a cultural infusion, like it's just not going to work. Like these are the kind of things that are the things that will shift. And so we're continuing to explore it. So it's been a fun kind of podcast to do and work on. But I also want to leave you some talks that I think that are really good. Something that like go watch these in your own time. I think they're really fun. This was at the AppSec USA. It was like 2.5 years ago, and this is the famous. Twitter talk about doing security automation at Twitter. This is a great talk, and we were really stoked to have it in Austin. Zane Lackey gave a great talk with Dan over at Velocity. I work with Zane, but I had this talk. I've always liked this talk before I work with Zane, so it's not like I'm like, oh yeah, Zane, you're so awesome. You are really awesome, Zane. So. There's a great talk by this guy Gareth Rushgrove on security monitoring tools, and Gareth works over at Puppet now, but he's over in London. And then Matt Conda gave a good talk on insecure expectations, so writing testing around security stuff. Okay, so now we're going to actually get into the tooling part of the talk. Like we're going to go through a couple examples and things that might be useful for you. And so we're just to like say it again, like we're using tooling to influence our culture, right? We're trying to influence the way we do automation, we do measurement and sharing. These are the ways we're trying to like build this stuff up. the types of scanning and testing that you can do, I think probably everybody in here is probably familiar with this, but it's all the way from static code analysis to dynamic stuff. We're doing virus scanning or code signing, business logic and flow stuff. All these are different, and they're not like, you can't replace, I've heard a couple talks that is like, you can't replace penetration testing. That's not the idea. But it'd be really great if we could start to automate some of our security attacks and do it in a way that is the currency of the other developers in our organization. And I really like the Riot Games talk where they're like, yeah, we just like ask people like what's really going on with them. We like just showed up and shut up for like an hour. And like that's pretty helpful, right? Because what's the I mean, I think he said something like, I don't want to put stuff on the on a Word doc or a PDF, right? It's like put it in the wiki and the systems where people already go for learning and like already go for education. So if you could already start building like tests and like putting the tests in the pipeline or putting tests in the build systems, like that really makes a big difference. So wouldn't it be nice if we could do that? We think so. You could start saying things like, the login page on my application should not be vulnerable to SQL injection. That would be good. And I think that's something that like a person who's not a security person would be like, I don't know what SQL injection is, but it sounds bad. So agreed, right? The search page should not be vulnerable to cross-site scripting. Again, I don't know what it is, but it says vulnerable, and XSS sounds really bad. So again, I don't want it. We should not have backdoors in our applications, or whatever it is that you kind of think about. But you start thinking of in terms that kind of cross boundaries. You want to work yourself out of the 100 to 1 to start finding like people in the 100 that could kind of start doing the work for you, right? I have a project that I work on called Gauntlet. It wraps Cucumber, and it does this kind of testing. So it does integration tests, meets dynamic application security testing, and here's kind of some like quick selling points for Gauntlet, or it's our philosophy. It's like it comes with pre-canned steps that hook security testing and tooling. It functions inside of your continuous integration and continuous delivery pipeline. It's always tries to be a good citizen of standard error, standard exit, or exit status and standard out. And but Gauntlet doesn't install any tools, not a package manager, doesn't do anything. It really only lightly wraps Cucumber, right? And so really it's super fair to just be like security plus Cucumber equals Gauntlet, which is kind of the idea of what we're going for. And it's really simple logic. You kind of are given some given steps, some when and then, right? And it's like this is using the Gherkin language here, and they look real similar to this. So at the top we have the feature is in-map attacks for example.com, and given we have in-map installed and we have the following host example.com, when I launch an in-map attack, the output should contain this, and it should not contain this other stuff. Right? It should not have a mail server open. Right? We have some different people that use Gauntlet, from Netflix to PagerDuty, Cab Forward. There's a company that's doing like consulting for military stuff that's using it. So it's cool. And more people are using it than that, but there's a lot of different attack tooling that's inside of it. We could totally use more to be added to it. All right, so I'm guessing you guys are kind of familiar with this list, but like there's some web scanners and some network scanners and some SQL injections. There's SQL map, right? And so we kind of wrap all those. But it tries to get around the problem statement of like, okay, well, how do you know SQL injection, cross-site scripting, and fuzzing, information leakage. And so you want to just ignore all that. You can just say, we're just trying to automate attack tooling. But more so, like we believe that we're trying to facilitate collaboration between those different groups. So the 100 and the 10 and the 1 can start kind of having meaningful conversations that are not just hateful. And so there's some information on how to get a hold of Gauntlet or do different things with it. But I have a demo, entire demo pipeline that you can look at, and so we're going to go through some of that. This looks pretty cool, right? You can see yourself using one of these things. Yeah? Somebody in the back owns too, right? All right, so we're going to look at a fully functioning attacking pipeline. So you can start out and fork this repo. And again, like we'll just kind of buzz through the slides, and then you can grab this on your own and look through it. Well, that's kind of like washed out, isn't it? Is that pretty hard to see back there? Yeah. Okay. Sorry about that. So I'll try to talk through it a little bit, but there's the Rails Travis example. into the secure pipeline project. We're actually going to look at two different repos inside there. One's going to be a Jenkins thing, and this one's hooked inside of Travis. Travis is like it's free if you're doing open source projects. So you can just you can fork this, get a Travis account, and like you're up in business with like your entire build pipeline with the Rails app with the tests already running in like 3 minutes or something like that. It's pretty fun to like do and hack on. So the labs inside of there are inside of /velocity. I'm going to show you the 3 files. Oh, this one came out a little better. So I'll show you the 3 files that they kind of like stitch this all together. So Travis has a YAML file, which is its like instruction set. And so there's all this stuff like before the actual install, do this business, before the script, and then here's the actual test script that we want to run. So up top, I'll just read out a couple so you can see in the back, but it says like install nmap, install like some SSL libraries, and install SSLIs. Before the script runs, we're actually going to start up our application. So we have this little like set token business. So like we do a rake for the database startup, and then we start up Rails. And then there's the actual gauntlet attacks are wrapped inside of a rake file, but I try to give them like meaningful names in here. So there's like network attack, SSL attack, cross-site scripting. There's a gem file that ships with this, so you just got to bundle when you first get it if you want to do it on your local machine as well. And we just require a couple versions in there. The reason why I show this here is like Arachne, could be installed in that other piece, but we're actually installing the gem file. So yeah, so let's see. And then the script actually executes the different rake tasks, and here's the rake file. That's what I was going to show. And each one of those is real simple, right? It's like gauntlet /test attacks, XSS attack, and then when you open up the cross-site scripting attack, it looks much like that file that we saw earlier, the given when logic, but it's up top. Given we have Arachne, make sure that we want, and we have this website loaded, so we're on localhost port 3000 /user/password/new, and we want to say that if we do cross-site scripting against that endpoint, we should find 0 issues were detected. And then also below, there's the same thing, but it's the users to the sign-up page. So we're not doing like a full scan where we just like, proliferate the entire site and do that. That's going to take hours, right? And that's not going to be useful for your CI or continuous delivery pipeline. But we're saying, okay, just look at this one page, and that one page should not have cross-site scripting on it. And so we're like being more discrete. And I think that's really important because a lot of security tools can run for days, right? And be super annoying that way. And so you'll still need to do the running for days bit, but once you find the thing, you program it in here, and then you're off to go that way. Okay, same thing for sign up page. They also have like a module called backdoors, so they check like random like PHP scripts and other things like that. I just did this because it was it's just like there's different pieces of the tools, and we're just pulling out different ones of them to try to run. All right, okay, here's a SQL map example. I won't roll through this whole thing, but same idea. We're attacking the new password page with SQL map. And if you've used SQL map before, you know that like it definitely can run for a really long time. So you really got to scope down the parameters and try to like find it. But you actually know what your application runs, so you don't have to run this like find which database. You're like, I know which database I'm running, right? And so it's like you don't have to spend a lot of time with that. I think Zane said in one of his talks, and I really liked it, but it's like a lot of times we see home field advantage to other people, but it's like we know what our stuff is running, so why not like write in gear stuff that's for them. So yeah, so some of the other things we're working on is a Gauntlet Docker container, so that you don't have to install Ruby and all that other stuff, and you can just be like, here's your container, give it an instruction set, let it run. There's some work being done on putting that into the Kali Linux distro. I think it's still a few more minutes, right? It wasn't like the go bell, was it? Looking on time. Okay, good. Okay, so, but wait, there's more. All right, good. Maybe use Jenkins, and here's an example of like how to do a secure pipeline using Jenkins. Also, this is in that repo. It's the same organization, but just a Jenkins example repo. And I won't talk through the whole thing, but we have. Oh man, that is pretty bad. So let's see. The top one is Brakeman check. The next one is known vulnerabilities. Yeah, then there's a like the third or fourth one down. There's like a run OWASP zap on it. There's a virus scan at the very bottom. And then you can use stuff like Jenkins Flow to sort of do this sort of stuff in parallel, because you're like, well, I know some of these take like a long time, or whether it has a virus or not doesn't change that I still want to do unit testing on it or whatever. So you kind of like, you don't have to put all these in serial, and so it kind of lets you compose your build process like that. A lot of people hate Jenkins, and sometimes it's because of stuff like this. So be careful, like that you don't take the build, and just change it so it's like running. Oh shoot, I've got plenty of time. You don't want to change the build so it's like running for like 15, 20 minutes. People really frown on that, right? So, okay, so this is the last thing that I'll show here, and then we can do maybe some questions if we have some time. If you're familiar with ZAP, which is the Z attack proxy, there's a command line wrapper for it called Zapper that Gareth wrote. Who's did the security monitoring talk I mentioned earlier, and it does something like this. You can just say Zapper attack and give it a website, and it starts proliferating all that. And then you can say, if you don't want to see reflected cross-site scripting in the results, and say that it has risk high. But it starts like letting you put the tool chain that you're using for penetration testing or other things like that inside your build and your dev processes. So. All right, so these are the slides if you want to get them. It's DevOps-AppSec-Tally on Bitly. And yeah, sure, yeah. All right, so it's really easy to get discouraged in our industry, but I think there is hope. I think we've seen through the path of agile DevOps and continuous delivery that there's a huge shift going on in the organization, and we actually have an opportunity to play a big part of that. So I think that's pretty exciting. It's going to be really important that we add value in the right places, and that's important. But I think that if done right, it can totally happen. Two places where I think you can really make a huge win is the build pipeline, influencing that, and the operational tooling that goes along with it. And make sure that you're actually thinking and getting your teams to think about like not just doing integration testing and unit testing, because and start thinking about how you do attack tooling, because now you're saying against this script that anybody on the internet could download, like you should be able to run that on our website on this page, and we should not be vulnerable to that, right? And that seems like pretty logical. But I think that it's one of those things that as security domain experts, like that, we'll have to shepherd our organizations through as we're kind of going through that process. So, anyways, I think that's it. But does anybody have any questions or comments on that? Yeah. Yeah, there's a generic command line adapter, and so we default to the command line, so you can, which Gauntlet itself is not secure. It's like it's pretty open there, but it'll execute whatever you give it on the command line, and you can do that. We have some Python wrappers for like the SSLI stuff and any like Python scripts that you want to put in there. So even some of the hooks for some of the applications are not super deep, but anything that has, like if you want to make sure it's inside your path, that it's installed correctly, that you have the right version, that you have the right libraries, stuff like that. Like those are the kind of things like to get a hook in there. But you could totally use the generic adapter, work on it for a little while, and then if you really like what you're doing and your flow for that, you could say, hey, I want to add this to the main, and like that'd be really cool. So yes, the answer is yeah. Yeah. Okay.
How do you cross that divide between two organizations where one's developing, the other one's doing operations? How do you get DevOps to work between two different companies?
Could you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah. Here's the thing, right? If I have a development organization within IT, and I get them to work engineering with IT operations, I can build a culture that doesn't work together. what if I'm buying from IBM or HP, and then going into operations, and I want to do patching. Something I haven't been able to figure out.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a tough one. I think you're, like, I haven't had to do that, so I can't like say like, oh yeah, here's the way you should do that. I do think that, like, for your system that you're acquiring and that you're working with, like, are you writing code that goes along with that as well? Like, are you building models or whatever?
I work for them.
Oh, okay, okay.
How do I get my development to be attached to that same culture? Like operations.
Oh, okay.
Because they're developing and putting it into the wall.
Oh, yeah, okay. So that's, yeah, maybe it's a little different question, or I didn't think about it properly the first time. But yeah, so it's important that the developers, do pager, like they get the pager, operations pager, just like everybody else does. We really focus, like a lot of organizations that I see that do DevOps the right way, or that seem to have a lot of success with it, will take their teams and say, like, you are now responsible for this thing. You're not responsible for just shipping the one piece, right? You're responsible for entire end-to-end life cycle, customer engagement, and total customer experience with the product. And so, it seems like that's the organizational shift, and a lot of people have done that. Like, that's the way the process they went through. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Okay, so wait, so they're building. Right. Yeah. Yeah. I got you. Okay, yeah, I think some of that happens naturally, like from the just from capitalism. It's like we require like you to do this, play ball the way that we want to play ball. Back 4 or 5 years ago, a lot of times I do calls with vendors, and it was always like, yeah, do you have an API? No, okay, and like that was it, and you ended up kind of having had that answer. Yeah. Yeah. That is a hard problem to span, right? Because then you start like I know some companies in Austin that have kind of done some different approaches on this, and one is like you have like a person who's kind of like goes to the different teams and is like shepherding those different processes and helping them happen. But part of it is allowing the team that's building the software like to pick their own tools that they want to build and how they want to support it and all that stuff. So. It's like that's a mixed thing. I'm trying to think about who's done it really well. I don't have any like great answers for you, because it's like most of the teams will, when they start going down that path of segmenting like this group over here, and this group over here, it starts feeling like there's going to be some overlap in systems. And maybe there's just some like good synergies, or synergy, that's a great word, right? But maybe there's like some like where you get groups together and you can kind of say, okay, we're both doing this like ticket management system. Would it make sense for us to kind of align together, or we're both using the same operational monitoring system or something like that. I'm trying to align on that. Most of the people that have struggled with that is where they start, everybody starts choosing their own choose their own adventure kind of path. And then they wake up 6 months later and they're like, what have we done? Like, now we have really disparate systems. And so sometimes there's like a need for like that oversight of like what we're doing inside the organization, and not just kind of building out these complete separate groups, because you're kind of making a new type of silo in that sense, and like, that's not super healthy either. Yeah.
So a lot of DevOps questions, and I want to let people know that I got scale coming up on February 9th to the 22nd. We have a lot of discount codes. We're getting $75, and on Friday we have a whole DevOps day. So please come if you're interested more in DevOps. I've got a booth down there. You can check out at the URL. I've got a discount code, $35. You want to ask for your manager, commission, LAX. So, thanks.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, yeah. So and that's like right here in town. So if you're local, it's totally cool. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, totally same. Yeah, same. Yeah. No market difference. It's all good stuff. Like it's all the same idea. So same approach, same idea, same thing. I don't make any money off of rugged DevOps or anything like that or whatever. So it's not like I just don't care. It's just the idea of like we do have an opportunity, and I think a lot of people are seeing that there's that opportunity, and that's what we're trying to do. And even the guys with those other, even people that are like saying DevSecOps or DevOpsSec or whatever, like same thing. I don't think nobody's like getting piles of cash off that, right? It's like it's just it's something we believe in, and we're just all talking about it in maybe slightly different language, but totally the same thing. Yeah, we should, maybe we should. Yeah. I mean, we sort of do. I mean, like, I know those guys will talk, so I'll adapt the slides to focus on that. Any other questions? Yeah?
What about the idea that get off the road? You said they make it off street, right off street, access.
Yes.
If there's a lot of the price where I work at, there's a lot of restrictions on what kind of access I can.
Yeah.
But I maybe one way around that and get this understanding.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I guess my point is like there is no DevOps role. Like there is no like DevOps is not a person or a role or whatever. It's just like it's the new way that we're trying to accomplish the our mission. So and I think that. Your point about rotation is that really like everybody really should be kind of playing ball with this. Like that's how you kind of build this out. So. All right, well, we should probably cut on time. I'll stick around here if anybody has any other questions or you're like that was horrible. Thank you for not asking a question and not saying that. But you can go tell me that. Thanks. I'm gonna like get these all to you now. Hey, thanks. Yeah, thanks. Hey, thanks. Appreciate it. Yeah. Cool. Okay. All right. You are? Nice. Cool. All right. Hey, we'll see you. Cool. Hey, thank you. Thanks for your question.